Welcome to Pioneers in Payments, where payments experts share their insights. Now, here's our host, Donna Blum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Pioneers in Payments. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with one of my friends from across the pond, from NCR Atleos. It's Alex Borthwick. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, Donna. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
I'm so glad you could join me today. So, my first question for you really is just to tell our audience a little bit about who you are, your background in the payments industry, and what you do at NCR Atleos.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. Always happy to talk about payments and myself. Two good topics, I think. So I've worked in payment space for pretty much my entire career. In the early days, I was in a large global corporate. I looked after our kind of payments and reconciliation processes, both our processes, our people, and our systems. And then I switched gears a bit and I moved into banking and the UK banks, where I've done a number of projects. I've implemented payment messaging systems. I was involved in the first faster payments or real-time payments projects in the UK a few years ago now. And really, that's where the foundation was for me, where I then moved into NCR Atleos. And I now own all our ATM and transaction processing software solutions. So everything it causes for our payments ecosystem, our ATM ecosystem, all the software that we sell to our customers and run ourselves, I look after, based out of Dundee in sunny Scotland, as you say.
Very nice. Well, you're lucky that it's sunny there. It's not here. It is February, the dead of winter, and there is snow and ice everywhere. So,
Well, I would say in Scotland, it's usually our sunny dispositions, not the weather, we have here.
okay. Well, that's even better. So, Alex, as you know, there is so much happening in the payments industry today. So many changes. So many like new technologies, and it's kind of hard to like kind of keep pace with it all. And so the purpose of this podcast is really to sort of speak with some people who are pioneers in the industry and talk a little bit about the main things, the biggest things, the things that are individuals watching this podcast should pay the most attention to. So we're trying to distill it, right, to some of the most important things to be on the radar. And so let's talk first about what you perceive the greatest trend in the industry to be.
Well, yeah, and I think, as you say, there's so many things, and especially when you start talking about technology. For me, actually, although it's not like a new trend, it's the importance of the trends, and really, I think about two things, because everything we do is ultimately to drive consumer experience or is driven by regulation, and to me, that's the two main facets you need to think about. Because let's face it, technology for technology's sake is not a reason, right? So when I think about the consumer experience, I just think some of it's a little bit cliche, because we've talked about the change of the smartphone for a long time and how it's changing our consumer experience. But I really do think that's gone into overdrive. And in that whole piece about consumers want to choose how, where, when, what they do to interact, no matter what the channel, is hugely important to a an institution, no matter what they're trying to deliver to their customers, especially in the banking world. And these behaviors that come from the mobile phone, why is an ATM different from a point of sale, or that kind of thing? I want to start a transaction somewhere and I want to finish it elsewhere. I want to do the transaction when I want to, how I want to. And if I want assistance, I want to be able to ask for it now, not wait till 9 o'clock tomorrow morning or all those things. So I think that bit ultimately is never, that kind of immediacy, simplicity, everything standard really does drive us to things like the real-time payments, which is in some parts of the world is commonplace, in other parts it's growing, right? And that's what, as a global company in 180 countries, we see a lot of differences, right? And the other one is open banking. What people can do on their smartphone or what people can do at their other endpoints. They want to be able to do it in a consistent, convenient, easy way. And that really does drive changes in what organizations have to be able to deliver, away from the kind of old school payments industry, which was all about scale, scaling, delivery, support, and we will tell the consumer how and what and when to behave, I think those days are completely done. The other one that comes in, I mentioned, is regulation, and I think we're seeing different types of regulation come in all over the world. Sometimes it is around that kind of experience and governments taking control of, we want to be able to deliver a certain type of digital experience at every endpoint. That's driving regulation. Or another one is like Cash Access UK, which is driving banks to have to be able to provide services at all geographies to all demographics and protecting the rights of everybody. These things absolutely have to be paid attention to, but they also drive to the ability to change and the ability to evolve solutions as opposed to the kind of old school monolithic ones. So really, I still think, in my long career, it's been about regulation and about consumer experience and consumer expectations. I think that's still true. I mean, how that plays out has changed, and I think we have to really focus in on it.
It kind of sounds a bit like a balancing act. When I think about those two things, it's like the customer experience that's fun. We can have some fun with this, do some new things that are really serving our customers well. Maybe it's something, that's kind of novel and they're like, look, I can pay with my watch now and those kinds of things. But on the other side, on the flip side, you've got the regulation, right? You got to keep things within uh, make sure that they're legal, they're compliant. So it really a balancing act there.
Yeah, and if you think about most organizations that we deal with here at Atleos, there's a huge number of things they're trying to achieve on any given day. And actually, I think the sweet spot is where you can do those two things together, right?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, a regulatory requirement drives a need for change. But nobody wants to do regulation for regulation's sake. So that's where having the right strategy and architecture and talking early, that kind of thing, really does come home, right? That can you hit that sweet spot of improving consumer experience and improving the offers you can give to your customer while meeting the regulatory need? That makes it a lot easier to drive.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we talked about the greatest trend. Obviously, there's lots of opportunities and challenges in the industry, and we could probably talk all day about those. But let's focus in on what you perceive the greatest opportunity to be in the industry for organizations that process payments.
Yeah, for me, I think that and I think it plays in a lot of the trends we see in technology projects across all areas, not just payments. But for me, the whole pieces around flexibility and integration and really being able to stage developments are really, really important. Payments projects are large, complex, difficult things to do, right? We all know that. The question is, how can you get to a point where you have stages, you deliver value along the way, you de-risk, you create checkpoints and balances? I think that's where the real opportunity is for most organizations. I think the days of doing, huge, big one-off projects to replace everything of a payment ecosystem, that's not going to happen, right? So unless you're an absolute startup with a blank piece of paper, you're going to have to think about staging and stuff. And certainly, I look at the investment I make in our payment solutions here at Atleos. A lot of it is about creating that capability to not have to do it all at once.
Yeah, I've often said, and this isn't my quote, but I've heard it, how do you eat an elephant? Just one bite at a time, right? So attempting to do it all at one time could be very overwhelming and could certainly lead to some, roadblocks. But yeah, I like that, the idea of more of a staged or phased approach. Yeah.
Yeah,
One,
and I always wonder where that quote came from, because the thought
I
of
do
eating an
too. I might
elephant
have to
doesn't feel
Google
right,
that.
right? Why is it not a huge chocolate fudge cake? But yeah, no, I think that
That
analogy
sounds
is
more
absolutely.
appetizing for sure.
Well, it's also, and you've got to think about the pure practicalities of organizations, right? If you think about investment cycles, payback, return, that's what every organization is coping with and wants to achieve, right? And that one bite, 1 year at a time versus multi-year programs is definitely the way forward. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. I agree with that 100%. Okay, so now what would you say is the greatest challenge that these organizations are facing?
Yeah, I think that probably I've touched on it already in some ways, right? But that, that having the time to really know where you want to go, and I always start that's not an architecture statement, that's a business goals and objectives statement. Um, you use the eating the elephant analogy. The other one, or the thing I always tell my kids, is always open doors, don't close doors, right? So knowing your business direction, knowing the space you want to be in, but realizing that might evolve, then playing that into your architecture of, well, what does that mean I need to go through in terms of my my endpoint, in terms of my systems and my processes, and what my architecture needs to look like. And the best thing about that is always a baseline plan, just like a baseline architecture is always there to change because world changes, but at least you've got a plan and you can start navigating towards that. But then map out that journey. I think spending the time and working with the experts in industry to go, how can I start to achieve these goals early? And how can I always move towards an end state as opposed to trying to do one end state all at once? I think it's hugely, hugely important, right? And that's not just an architecture thing. That's got to be the full gambit of art. When I say not just a technical architecture, it's a full gambit: business architecture, enterprise architecture, etc. I think it's really important. And the other thing is, don't forget the back office processes, right? Settlement, reconciliation, disputes. These are all hugely important. And actually, I would also say more and more play in where's your security journey going in the payment space as well. These things all have to come together to go, right, where do I want to go? And then you can break it down into what is that next thing I want to achieve for my consumer, or what regulation, and can I eat some of this based on one of those programs, and get it into manageable chunks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So really, I mean, the idea is you kind of have to have the end goal in mind, right? And then set that's the trajectory of where you're heading. And so it's so important to really take the time to identify what the end goal is and then take steps along the way to get there, and also to look at the big picture. You mentioned, taking the back office into consideration. So, it's an end-to-end type of view.
And also recognize with those, each stage you take, it can't be absolutely fixed to only one endpoint. It needs to be a step in the right direction,
Yeah.
but still have flexibility, right? So, and I think that can cover many aspects of it. But that's then it's the plan, do, act, check type of continuum that we were all taught in grade school, right?
Okay, well, this is my favorite question. I'm going to ask you now to just take all of your sum total of knowledge and experience in the industry, and to summarize, what is your silver bullet piece of advice for payments organizations?
Yeah, I think whatever you're doing, it has to be start early. Whether if you think about payments change, whether you're a company that drives payments, whether you're a consumer of payments, that whole space is, as I've said, is really, really difficult. So starting early, make sure the organization, your environment, the influencers as well, right? What could influence the change of strategy? How can you deliver? Who will influence making the changes you need? That all takes time. And making sure everybody's bought into this journey of manageable stages, what you're trying to achieve in one by one by one. I think that's absolutely key. Understand your goals, barriers, milestones, and make sure you have the right partners to deliver. There's no project I've ever worked on with a customer, or when I was in banking myself, where one person can carry the whole load. That we're doing all the cliches this time, but it's a team game. So early, start early, get all the right stakeholders involved, know why, what, and how, and then that can lead to a great strategy, and then ultimately through great execution. And it's one of those ones, and I will cheat a little bit here and give you a sub bullet, pardon the pun. Is always remember that triangle, right? People, process, and technology. It's not, you cannot just do one of them. And really, that really does often play back to, there's probably three different stakeholders in most institutions, right? So, these are hard, difficult projects, but they can be hugely successful and hugely rewarding for anybody who wants to drive consumer behavior, be a leader. But it does take time, effort, and great stakeholder management.
Yeah, that's very good. I'm going to kind of throw one extra question in there on you. So with all that is happening, I would imagine it's pretty easy to just, get into a situation where there's analysis paralysis, right? Like, we're looking at this and we're looking at that and we're trying to formulate our plan, but we really don't know which way to go. What do you suggest for organizations that might be kind of getting stuck?
Yeah, I think that's it's always it's one we always have to be difficult because they're conscious of rather, and it's because there's so many different facets that you're thinking about here. It's very rarely, and obviously there are some organizations which are payments only, right? But a payment strategy is usually part of a overall company strategy, right? And I think for me, that breaking it into chunks and being flexible is the key to that, right? We all as leaders have to make the best decision we can based on the best data we have in the day. And we, you in some ways have no regrets, but one of those facets is how do I keep this journey I'm going on? So even if I end up deviating a bit, I'm still going in the right direction, right?
Right.
And I think that whole bit of start early, know your strategy, know your stakeholders, but then get it into sizable chunks that you can then move forward on that give you the option to still pivot a little if you need. That to me is the secret of good execution. And that is probably the only way you're going to be able to do the best projects I've ever driven have been the ones when you're meeting a regulatory requirement because you have to move forward, but you're doing it in a way that drives something better for your business or your consumer. You're only going to be able to do that by starting early and by chunking it up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, just get started. I mean, it's not as if changes can't be made along the way, but
Yeah, and
yeah,
if you pick the right solutions, right? And that's part of the if you're just trying to do one multi-year program, I think that's where you can get stuck. To me, it's several programs over several years to achieve an aim. You won't get stuck.
right. Very good. All right. Well, Alex, I appreciate your all that you've shared with our audience here today. But before I let you go, I want to make sure that our audience knows how they can maybe get in touch with you or learn more about NCR Atleos and your products and services. What would you like to share with our audience?
Oh, no, thank you, Donna. It's not why we're here, but it's a nice finish, right? So you can visit us on ncratleos.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn where we post a lot of articles. But really, I think when we're talking about payments, it's not many times it's not a self-serve thing, right? Get in touch and let's have a conversation. We've got a group of specialists that do all sorts of payments projects all over the world. And I think, as I say, start early, engage early. We can help guide that conversation because these are hard, complex things to do. So get in touch. We're always happy to have a chat and connect you with some of our leaders in the payments industry.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate your time and your insights. I know our audience does as well. And I just want to thank everybody for watching today. Have a great day.